condenaron de modo vehemente.
Plato's criticism of traditional literature and of the stories in them was that the gods essentially didn't act like gods. I think Plato especially was very uncomfortable with that because of his own notion of what a god ought to be. You can see some of the same critique in Euripides, in his tragedies, his sense that, gods shouldn't really act the way that a lot of the myths he's treating dramatically show them.
Certainly when you look at a drama like the Ion, in which Apollo is represented as a rapist, you begin to question the value of a god like that.
Algunos filósofos creyeron que la redención era la moraleja de la historia. Al final de la obra, la mujer que fue ultrajada se convirtió en la madre del hijo de Apolo, Ión. Él llegaría a convertirse en el líder de la ciudad-estado de Atenas. Muchas de las obras reflejaban el lado más tempestuoso de la naturaleza humana en la conducta de los dioses. La sexualidad y los asuntos del corazón eran controlados por Afrodita, la diosa de la belleza, el amor y la fertilidad. Al igual que Apolo, Afrodita vivió una vida turbulenta.
Aphrodite was connected with warfare through her union, her affair with Ares, the god of war. And they were two famous lovers. Aphrodite wasn't actually married to Ares. She was married to Hephaestus, or Vulcan, the god of the forge. But she had this flaming affair with Ares, the war god. And the question is, why are these two always getting together? It's the fury of their mutual passions which made them two gods that were beyond the control of all the other gods. And as the saying goes, that every lover is a soldier on a campaign.
En consecuencia, las primeras escrituras griegas transmitían las lecciones de la vida diaria. Sin embargo, algunas obras reflejaron una actitud flagrantemente sexista hacia las mujeres. Un ejemplo de esto fue la historia de Hipólito.
He despised women, he despised female sexuality, he was chaste, pure. We'd send him to a psychiatrist, but pure as the snow. His stepmother's nurse, handmaid, went to Hippolytus and told Hippolytus that his stepmother was in love with him. Hippolytus was appalled. He was horrified.
When Greek men got together at the drinking parties, at the symposia, we know that they told stories, that they produced poetry, which made fun of women. In early Greek culture, women were seen as consumers of men's effort. The man had to farm, the woman simply consumed the effort, stayed at home, cooked, and was always on the man's back. And there's a strong misogynistic strain in Greek literature all the way through the 5th and the 4th century.
Así, los grandes dramas y comedias se presentaron en los anfiteatros de todo el territorio, con repartos totalmente masculinos que desempeñaban el papel de los dioses y las diosas, así como de los hombres y las mujeres mortales. Pero los griegos no fueron los únicos absorbidos por las historias de deidades y héroes. Hacia occidente, cruzando el Mediterráneo, un nuevo gran imperio estaba por nacer. Cuando regresemos, la sombra de la poderosa Roma cae sobre la antigua Grecia. Los dioses y diosas griegos, al igual que la Grecia clásica, conocerían los embates del tiempo y de los cambios. Como deidades funcionales, finalmente serían cubiertos por la niebla del tiempo. Sin embargo, no han desaparecido completamente.
Even though they're not part of our religion, we still need these stories. They're wonderful, richly suggestive tales about how the world works and what we are as human beings. generation after generation of modern students love and are fascinated by these myths. And I think that springs from something we all have in us, which is a desire to make stories, a need to understand the world by making stories about it.
La mitología griega ha trascendido los siglos, llegando hasta nosotros no solo en la forma de grandes poetas y dramaturgos, sino a través de otras culturas. Una de las primeras fue Roma, en el extremo occidental. Esta absorbió mucho de lo que Grecia tenía que ofrecer.
The Romans discovered Greek religion really in the 3rd century BC and began to make a bigger deal of it than it had been before. We know that there had been cultural contact for a long time, but there was a kind of prestige to the Greeks that the Romans felt they didn't have. And so they took over really the Olympian system and aligned their own local gods with more recognizable high-status Greek gods.
Al adoptar a los dioses de los griegos, los romanos impregnaron el panteón de deidades con características distintivamente romanas. La primera prioridad fue asignarles nombres romanos.
Zeus became Jupiter in their terms. Ares became Mars. Athena became Minerva. And when I say became, I mean that they had these gods existing already, Minerva, Mars, Jupiter, but they now aligned them in a new way that said, yes, we're part of a continuum of culture with the higher status Greeks.
Otros dioses adoptados por los romanos incluían a Hera, quien llegaría a conocerse como Juno. A Poseidón se le dio el nombre de Neptuno. Hades reemergió como Plutón. Afrodita sería inmortalizada como la diosa Venus. Y así, el panteón griego se convirtió a gran escala en el panteón romano. Cuando la poderosa Roma se convirtió en un imperio, finalmente ocupó un desconocido y polvoriento rincón del Medio Oriente llamado Judea. Aquí, los hebreos se amontonaban alrededor de su ciudad capital, Jerusalén, donde una nueva religión estaba naciendo. Después de la crucifixión de Cristo, sus enseñanzas se extendieron rápidamente. Incluso el cristianismo encontró conexiones con las filosofías griega y romana, particularmente a través del apóstol Pablo.
We know that Paul was educated in Greco-Roman terms. He quotes Euripides at least several times in his epistles. Later on, notions that had developed in Platonism especially became crucial in the ways in which early Christians tried to make their religion more understandable to a highly educated class in the Greco-Roman world. In the Orthodox Church, even today, the Greek Christian Church, you still see some of the mysticism that you can identify in the works of Plato in the 4th century BC.
La creencia cristiana de que Jesús era el Hijo de Dios, nacido de una mujer mortal, tenía reminiscencias de los antiguos griegos.
Because Greek religion was completely comfortable with the notion of gods interacting with human women, I think it helped in the spread of Christianity at an early period that a narrative like that was at its core. And so we'll never know cause and effect, and I certainly don't want to attribute early Christianity wholly to the Greeks, but it helped that the groundwork was laid.
A pesar de la enorme cantidad de divinidades que dominaba a los griegos pocos siglos antes del nacimiento de Cristo, una nueva idea se expandió entre la gente: la noción de la existencia de un solo Dios verdadero.
The Greek world shifted towards monotheism, I would say, sometime around the 400s and 300s BC, with the advent of philosophy. And philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, who were skeptical of the Greek religion, the way it was written in mythology, but they did believe in some supreme force, some supreme all-good all-knowing kind of power.
Este movimiento hacia el monoteísmo en la antigua Grecia no pasó desapercibido para el apóstol Pablo. Un día en Atenas, Pablo se encontró dirigiéndose a los ciudadanos griegos desde la cima del Areópago, una colina que era lugar de reunión para un consejo de nobles.
Entonces Pablo, puesto en pie en medio del Areópago, dijo: Varones atenienses, en todo observo que sois muy religiosos, porque pasando y mirando vuestros santuarios, hallé también un altar en el cual estaba esta inscripción: al Dios no conocido. Al que vosotros adoráis, pues, sin conocerle, es a quien yo os anuncio. El Dios que hizo el mundo y todas las cosas que en él hay, y de una sangre ha hecho todo el linaje de los hombres, para que habiten sobre toda la faz de la tierra. Hechos 17, 22, 26.
Una de las más poderosas fuerzas que dio forma al pensamiento griego fue la conciencia del pecado. Pero hace 2000 años, el concepto de pecado era muy distinto a las creencias de los primeros cristianos.
The Greek word for sin, the closest one, is a word that means to miss the mark, to err, to go wrong. Now, what does that mean? To sin, if you go too high, it means that you're stepping beyond human limitations. If you go too low, it means that you're not living up to your fulfillment. And so, for the Greeks, a sin was really not fulfilling who you are.
Pese a que está separada de nosotros por muchos siglos, la gran exhibición de dioses, diosas y héroes, de musas, destinos y gracias, desmesurados éxitos y amargas derrotas, es tan significativa actualmente como lo fue para los antiguos griegos.
The interesting thing about the Greeks at that period who venerated these gods, but they gave to the gods the attitude also of human beings. There was the fighting, there was the jealousy, there was the adultery, there was the happiness, there was the truth, there was the peace. There were all the things that were going on in everyday's life of the human beings was also associated with the gods. And I think that is part of the reason why these things have survived all these centuries in the minds of people and identified in the way the Greeks think even today.
Greek myths is a whole body of narratives. Say something very complicated about the world. They speak to a kind of optimism and a kind of pessimism at the same time. Greek myth as a whole really does tell us through a lot of exemplary stories, a lot of different things about the nature of reality and the nature of life, what's important, what we ought to care about.
One of the major lessons is that to read any of these stories, which are timeless treatments of big human questions of personal morality versus the morality of the state and laws that are imposed, and how do you negotiate these very difficult questions of the best behavior as a citizen in the state, those are addressed by Greek myths and by Greek legends. And you are left with this feeling that we don't know really what these gods are or who they are. But we know there's some force out there. There's some huge force that's controlling our lives, and that we have to keep an open mind to what that force is doing. That's why the Greeks can speak across 3,000 years of history and tell us some questions, if not the answers, to some of the most perturbing eternal questions in the world.
Hubo una vez aquí otro mundo, y los dioses y diosas y la gente que vivió aquí todavía se sienten en el paisaje. Sus historias todavía viajan a través del tiempo. Mientras los humanos buscan un entendimiento más profundo de ellos mismos y su mundo, la antigua Grecia sigue viviendo.
Todos ustedes, los otros dioses de este gran lugar, garantícenme que mi alma será hermosa, y garantícenme que todas mis posesiones externas estarán en pacífica armonía con mi ser interior. Platón.